Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little guy right here. This is the Peña Knives Front Flipper Trapper. By the way, it's a trapper knife that is a front flipper rather than a knife that traps front flippers. I put it around other front flippers. They were unscathed, so, keep that in mind. But first off, in the name of full disclosure, this guy was loaned to me initially by Peña himself, by Enrique Peña. He reached out to me on Instagram, said, Nick, I love your videos. He'd seen some of the comparison of his custom to a Rayot and whatnot. He wanted me to check out one of his newest ones. And I told him, as always, I'm talking about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be a junk. And he actually said to me, well, actually, I want you to give me the bad and the ugly because that's what I can learn most from. Yeah, that's a good response. Anyways, though we need to keep in mind, this is probably the best quality controlled one of these ever, and I have done my best not to let that influence my review unduly, but yeah, there you go, full disclosure. Next thing, size comparison. Here it is against the Spyderco Delica, as always for tradition's sake, Ontario Rat number 2, and so you can see here, this is not a very large knife, and the Rat number 1 right here. Then actually, I want to compare it to a couple of other knives that sort of feel like they're in a similar vein in some ways. Here it is against the made slip joint here, which is another modernized take on a traditional knife. Here it is against the Chris Reeve Knives Nundy, which is sort of... It is a very, very well-known blend of modern and traditional in the knife community, and then this is probably the closest thing I have to a fancy high-end custom knife aside from this one. This is the ProTech Knives Ultimate Gem Sprint. All of these guys are, they feel like there are some similarities, at least spiritually speaking, across those guys. Spiritually. Oh, God, I'm weird. Anyway, so there you go. Next thing, you're probably thinking, Nick, this is a custom knife. It's a handmade one-off piece. What are you doing? You don't do that. It is true. I don't do that much work in that domain. But the simple fact is that Peña is a maker that I know, and he's a maker that I respect, most importantly. One of the reasons I stay away from customs is there's so much variance. There are some incredible makers out there. I don't want to impugn the whole market, but there are also a number of people where it's just like, yeah. But Peña, I know his work is good. He's one of the custom makers I respect most, and when he reached out and wanted to send me, so I wanted to check it out, because I know a lot of folks are also interested in it, and his work is in high demand, and I wanted to make sure his latest stuff is still up to spec. You know what? Well, actually, no, I handled some of his stuff at the California Custom. Anyways, so that's the reason I want to check this guy out, and I'll be honest with you, this is something I've asked for a long time from the knife world. Modernized, traditional sorts of ideas, and so that definitely made this personally appealing, and I gotta be interested, part of this is very personal. So anyways, that's how this guy ended up on my table despite being custom. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So first off, on the good side, this guy actually comes with a branded slip. You can see here he's got a EP, Enrique Peña, which is very different from his normal logotype, but he included this guy directly with the knife. It came in the package with it, and it works very nicely. It actually fits very nice. One of the ways I've been carrying this guy is by sliding this case this way down into the key pocket of my pants, because there it carries very nicely. This gives it's not going anywhere inside this case, and then when I pop it open, it's very easy. You just squeeze a little bit, and then bam, I think this is a nice way to go. He has the option, by the way, for a clip on this knife, to put a clip on the show side, or rather, I guess the clip side by default. But, and it looks like it'd probably be fine, but I was a little reluctant, just given the size of this guy and the overall look and the effect. I kind of feel like there's something to be said for keeping it more traditional. And so I'm not sure whether I made the best call here, but you know what, it sure works, and including this little pouch is kind of a nice thing, especially one that's of good quality. And he led me to believe that he's sewing him himself, which is, kind of cool too. But I'd rather he spend the time making knives, whatever, not a big deal. Next thing, size-wise, this is a very legal knife in a variety of ways. If we do a quick measurement on the blade here, we're coming in around 2.75 inches. Which is going to make this guy legal in most, but the most restrictive locales. And that's kind of a nice detail as well. And frankly, it's also a very office-friendly knife. Not only in the fact that it's kind of got that old-world traditionally style, which can be very appealing to a number of folks, especially the scared ones, but just the size on it overall, it's well-sized, it's well done overall. I think in terms of legality, this is good to go. Next thing, in terms of cutting, this is good to go as well. This is a very, very nice blade blade on this knife. The steel on it is CPM 154. It is ground down to a very, very nice edge. You can see how nice and thin it gets down there. Oh, yeah. And it has this big old sharpening choil right here, but the grind on this guy and just the blade overall is just really excellent. Every time I actually use this to cut things, it was beautiful. So that's a great thing. I like the blade on it a lot. There's a lot to love about the blade, and so there you go. And by the way, the plunge with this choil is just, it's right on. Next thing, the execution of this knife is, and I don't say this lightly, I mean, you don't hear this word all that often on the channel, but it is perfectly executed. What I mean by that is that I have spent some time with this knife. I've probably, how long have I had this guy? Maybe a month now. And I've spent a number of, because this is what I do. I'll sit there if I'm just like waiting for something to compile or run or something. I'll just sit there and kind of turn things over and look and look and look. Honestly, I can find no fit and finish faults at all with this knife. Zero, nothing. It is absolutely beautifully done. The finishing on all of the parts is gorgeous. It is just really, really, really well freaking done. In that domain of fit and finish, I have zero things to complain about. And that's kind of tough. I mean, generally speaking, especially at this kind of a price point, I am really good at finding things to complain about in terms of fit and finish. There is not anything there, and so that's great. Next thing, the action on this guy is really good. It deploys absolutely 100% reliably with the right grip, with the right approach, and it is ridiculously smooth. Here, I'll try and show you this off. This just takes a little bit of a shake shut. That's because the blade is relatively light, because the blade stock is a reasonable thickness. Thank you, by the way. But the action on this is just gorgeous. I freaking love the action of this knife. It's super smooth. It's, oh yeah. This is every bit as smooth as anything else in my collection. Which, okay, maybe there's a little bit more friction there than like the Grimsmo Norseman or something like that. But still, really, really good. Next thing, the materials on this guy are great. These are just two different kinds of micarta. And you can see here, this micarta is matching this micarta here. And then coupled there's a little bit of black G10 in the middle there. Yeah, coupled with the line is nice. Very nice. And in fact, there are details just all over this freaking knife that are just very impressive. One of the things that I like a lot is the finish on the blade. Generally speaking, I tend to go for a stonewashy sort of finish, but this has this gorgeous, very, very, very uniform hand rub finish that is just reflective enough to play with the light. You know, you can just catch that slightest glimpse of the Batman mask going on there. But more importantly, it is just absolutely gorgeous in actual everyday life. It doesn't seem to take scratches or anything too much from everyday use. But another cool thing about it is that he's using that same finish on the liners here. You can see here it is just the exact same sort of luminosity, if you will. The back of the spine matches the back of this guy here. Then coupled with the shield here, which is in a very similar finish, as are the screws. That's a nice little detail, keeping that finish uniform throughout. The logo looks absolutely great here. I mean, it's very clear, but it's also very clean. He's got this nice G10 underlay for the micarta, and you can see that it's not just a single stripe here, but it goes all the way underneath here. So he has milled this G10 down to a very, very thin, and then, oh man, that's just great. And the finishing, the insert here is not feelable. I mean, you can feel that you've gone from a micarta to a metal, but there's no gaps anywhere on this. Yeah, and then coupling that with the micarta back spacer, which matches the little tiny swedge that catches the light a little bit. The super precise jimping even. Look at this freaking jimping here. That's really nice. You can tell that I'm a little bit smitten with the level of quality in this knife here. This is, and I'll say this again, this is the kind of knife that reminds me why people buy handmade custom knives. This is really good, or computer made, but this is just really, really well done in that domain. And then finally on the good side, look, honestly, I find this knife really attractive. This is to my estimation, just gorgeous. Not only is it a very nice handle, not only are all the finishing details there, but it just has a look to it that I think is a beautiful blend of good old-fashioned traditional with modern sorts of sensibilities. And it just comes across as just immensely classy. It's just really, really nice. And so to me, all of that here is the good. It's that it's a really attractive knife. That's subjective, but I feel it strongly. It has amazing details freaking everywhere. The materials are great. The action is ridiculously good. It is perfectly executed, and I hesitate to say that just because I don't say it very often. It's got a great blade. It's very legal in size. Comes with a nice branded slip. To me, what's great about this guy, although any of that stuff probably could have been great, is the fact that this is so freaking weird. Peña has looked at a good old-fashioned traditional trapper knife and said, you know what, I'll take that. I'm going to make it a front flipper liner lock. So that's weird, right there. Just even that conversation is strange. But the fact that he then did it really compellingly is quite impressive to me. Because this is, looking at it, fundamentally, it doesn't look like it's some modern monstrosity. It doesn't have a huge front flipper tab hanging off the top of it. It looks every bit like an old-fashioned traditional knife, but then you flip it over here and it's very much a liner lock. By the way, the scalloping here to allow you to get at the lock, to unlock it, and then the lock bar tension, no hint of... I'm sorry, but it's just really unusual. I mean, how many people are making front flipper liner locks? Give you a hint. I don't think really anybody. There were very, very few people. I mean, okay, you could argue like the Gareth Bull is about the only other person doing this very reliably, but even then, this has a sense of traditionality that's just not present in those kinds of things, and I think it scratches an itch that a lot of folks have. I think a lot of people love the idea of traditional knives, and a lot of people love traditional knives too, independently. But to have something that very seamlessly merges the old and the new here is absolutely great. It's just really really unusual in that domain of custom modern. It's just weird. And I've talked about knives needing to stand out, needing to have a why. And honestly, yeah, this is it. There is very little like that out there in the world. And I'm really, really happy with that. I love to see these kinds of modernized traditionals. I think it's a great world, and I hope we see it more often in this custom world. So that to me is what's great, is that it's just a unique piece. There are some bad things here. To start with, it's going to be too small for a lot of folks. For me, it's a very nice size, but for some folks, this is small. I have relatively small hands, so it works out for me, but yeah, keep that in mind. Next thing, this is a free spinning pivot. You're going to need two T15 bits. That's a little unusual, not great, but you know what? Okay, whatever, not a huge deal, but it is something that could be fixed in the future. Next thing, the steel on this guy is CPM 154. CPM 154 is a fine steel. It is absolutely good to go for everyday carry. It's a particle metallurgy version of 154 CM. The thing is, though, for other knives in this price range, it's a little bit behind the curve. Very often in this price range, you're getting things like M390, 20CV, etc. Not the end of the world, but at this kind of price, it's an area where it could up the game a little bit. Next thing, there is no steel labeling on this guy. Unless it's hidden someplace that I haven't noticed, there is not a place where you can read what steel this is. Not a huge deal, but and especially given that it's custom. But still, I'd like to see something like that. Next thing, price on this guy is going to be quite high. This is $850 as configured right here. That is a lot of money. That is absolutely a lot of money. That puts this above and beyond a lot of things. This is the second most expensive knife in my collection after this guy right here. Yeah. But the simple thing is that this is really good. At some level, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of money. That's going to put it completely out of range for a lot of folks, but this is so good that I can't really get too bent out of shape about it. I've seen much less in the way a knife sold for much more in the custom world, and so I can't, sure, would I love this to be $200? Yeah, sure, but I can't get too bent out of shape about that. There you go. A bigger issue actually is availability. There aren't that many of these because they are, handmade customs. This guy has a brother, out and about, I believe has a clip on it, but, and there were a bunch, a couple went to Blade HQ at some point. point in time, and I think you'll probably be able to get from shows and things like that, but I'd like to see more of these come available. I know there are logistical issues with handmade customs, but still, that's definitely a downside here. And then finally, on the bad side, there is definitely a learning curve with this front flipper. So initially, when I started to attack this guy, so to speak, when I first got it, my thought was to treat it like you treat most other front flippers. There's a different front flip, a very different one, by Reiki knives, whatever. And there, what you want to do is kind of treat it like a lighter, where you use your thumb here and you slide this off to the side. And, you know, what, that works fine in many cases, but with this guy, there's really not much beef to hold on to on this guy, because there's not like a clip or anything back here. That's one advantage. If you're really planning to do lighter style front flipping, you do probably want that clip just as a place to grab. And you can do that. But the problem with it is that I found that very often I was not able to get it to fully open that way. And, you know, it was also, this is a very fiddly grip, so it's very easy to drop it and have it fly out of your hands. And at one point in time, I was screwing around on the couch with it. And I just kind of put my index finger over the top here, and a little bit off to the side is what seems to work best. And I pull, and then it deploys. And that's the approach. That's how it works, and there it works great. With this domain, with this approach here, there is absolutely no issue. It flips beautifully, but until I figured that out, it wasn't great. There is a learning curve there, and so that was actually the moment when I figured that out. I was like, oh, okay, well, now I'm buying it. So, spoiler alert, I guess. But anyways, so those to me are the bad things here. Is there is a learning curve on this front flipper style here, most specifically with the lack of other handle on it. The availability isn't great, given that it's a handmade custom. They need to have a production version of this like ASAP. The price is quite high, although, again, I don't struggle given the level of work here. There's no steel labeling. CPM 154 is a little bit down the range for what we're paying here. It's fine, but yeah, it's a free spinning pivot, and it's going to be too small for some people. Pretty great for me. The ugly front, once I figured out the best way to open it, and realized that works great, there's nothing ugly. Initially, I was a little scared. If this was the only approach, that was going to be ugly, but once I figured that out, it's like, nope, we're good to go. So to me, that's well, there is no ugly once I figured that part out. There you go. So final conclusion. Look, this is a really, really impressive knife. I'm actually kind of doing my best here to not sound like a fanboy. But this is one of the most impressive pieces that's come across my table. And it's impressive in a very different way than usual. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've had on the high end, the things like the Grimsmo Norseman, the Holt Spectre, the really, really high end, you know, CNC made sorts of things. But this is a very different sort of affair because it feels decidedly non-modern. It feels decidedly analog. It feels decidedly old school. Yet it is still amazingly well done here. Absolutely impressive. It is well made. It's ridiculously smooth. It's got a great details, a beautiful design, and a very unique approach to knife in general here. That blend of modern traditional is stellar. And I feel like it's a knife that's very much on brand for Peña, but not really for that many other folks. There aren't that many folks who would do something like this. It's not perfection. It is a small knife, and that's going to bother some folks. It's not the latest and greatest of steels. It's got a bit of a learning curve, and it does have a pretty high price tag if you can get one at all. But the thing is, I'm just really impressed with it. I really, really am. I mean, it's always hard to review custom knives, and I acknowledge that there's often people express frustration with custom reviews, because in this domain, each one of them is unique and handmade. And I can't just go say, yeah, go buy one, go pick one up. So there needs to be a production version of this, like 1,000%. This needs to happen such that people can just go get one. Because this is a really great idea, a really great design, and if he works with a good maker, that could be excellent. But the very best thing I can say about a custom knife in general is if you can find one of these guys, if you have the opportunity, you should buy it. And the thing is, I can say that honestly here because, well, I had the opportunity. He loaned it to me, but he had said, you know, if you're interested, we can talk about it. And he sent this to me. And then once I figured out the opening method, it was just like, okay, Enrique, you're not getting this back. What's your PayPal? And we made it happen. That was just a no-brainer for me. Once I figured that out, it's like, nope. this one's mine now. And so it's very clear that then, I hope to all of you, that this is a freaking gem. In fact, I'll go one step further and say this is one of the custom knives that reminds me why people love custom knives. I'm not generally big on the custom market. It's not where I spend most of my time, but then I have something like this, and it's just like, oh yeah, that's right. That's why. And that's really, really nice. And it runs the risk of turning me into a Peña fanboy, but that's beside the point. Anyways, I guess final conclusion, this is really great. If you have the option to pick one of these guys up, or frankly, at this point, I can pretty much say anything Peña makes is probably going to be good to go. He does really, really nice work, but this is great. The ideas that it represents, this modernized traditional sense, are great. And I will absolutely be keeping an eye on Peña's work in the future. And I think you probably should too, because, I mean, holy crap. So anyways, there you go. Hope this is interesting and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now. And I hope I didn't unfairly penalize this for its size, given that that's relative. No, okay. Anyways, I hope this enriched your knife buying experience. Get it? Enrique and Rich? No? Okay. I'm done. Bye, everybody.